we'll start our next panel. And this is our Key Spouse Best Practice panel. It is facilitated by Miss Teresa Galvin, the Personal and Work Life Program Manager at AFPC, Airmen and Family Readiness Operations Branch. Just a reminder to put your questions in the Q&A, and the chat feature is for comments and interactions. With that reminder, we'll turn it over to Teresa to talk us through these Key Spouse Best Practices.
Thanks so much, Andrea. Glad to be here. Good day, good evening. Welcome, everyone. The Key Spouse Best Practice panelist, it's phenomenal. As long as we've been doing it, the best practices, it serves to inspire us and to implement these wonderful, wonderful practices at your installation. I'd just like to say thank you for the 3 individuals who are with us today. They are very busy and they've taken time out of their schedule to share what they have learned, lessons learned, and how it impacts airmen, guardians, and families. So I think you're really going to enjoy this. As Andrea mentioned, if you want to ask questions, by all means, feel free to type those questions in the question and answers, and we will respond to those. If we don't have enough time, just remember, we will post those to the Key Spouse website. And just to let everybody know, the slides are now in the Key Spouse website, so you can follow those along. So without further ado, I want to turn the mic over to our first panelist. Miss Amy Beck is from Ramstein Air Base, Germany. Over to you, Amy.
Thank you so much. So for those that have PCS'd overseas before, you know that moving OCONUS is a struggle. Even those that have PCS'd a dozen times in their life still agree that overseas assignments are the most challenging, and it can take the longest time to acclimate. This is something that overseas we have to factor in when deciding how to approach relocation as a key spouse. I try to make sure that the sponsor shares the key spouse or the spouse sponsor information when they first make contact with the new family. If I don't hear from the spouse, I ask the sponsor to give my information one last time prior to their arrival in case they have any last minute questions. There's so many factors people have to think about with overseas moves. So most spouses have a lot of questions they want answered about housing, the schools, jobs, and just living overseas. It is incredibly important to make sure you are able to lead them to the right place to get their questions answered correctly, especially because often the process has changed since you arrived at the base. Your local AFRC is always a great resource for that. The day of arrival, I try to be at the terminal if at all possible. We're lucky at Ramstein and most people fly into the terminal on base, which makes it much easier. And I try to provide a welcome bag, oftentimes funded by the Booster Club. Families come in jet lagged and exhausted, and I remember how stressful those first 24 hours were, having to not only settle into the TLF, but also figure out what we were going to eat those first few days. Especially with jet lag, a lot of people will wake up in the middle of the night, and at most overseas locations, everything closes early and can be closed on Sunday off base. There's nothing worse than being stuck. And next slide, please. In their welcome bag, I provide a starter kit of essentials. If I make contact with the family beforehand, I try to tailor it to them and their allergies, but as a basis, I try to have coffee or energy drinks, some sort of breakfast food like cereal, and German shelf-stable milk or oatmeal, and easy meals like pasta. The TLFs locally normally have a kitchen, so it makes it much easier, but I try to make sure the meals are also as microwave friendly as possible, just in case. Something I wish I had remembered during our first shopping trip that I always try to include in the welcome bag is salt and pepper. If they have kids, I add in snacks for them and juice boxes. And if they have a pet, I'll try to grab something for them as well. Helpful things to add that, again, you don't realize you'll need until it's too late are a few laundry pods, converter plugs, and a parking meter for off base. Just to note, this bag isn't supposed to replace their first shopping trip, but can give them a little help and show that the unit cares about them. Flights can shift, and the stores can be closed depending on what time they get in. To help them acclimate, their bag also includes the local newspaper, Find It guide, base magazines, as well as the Welcome to Germany booklet provided by Stars and Stripes. I also include a Welcome to the Unit pamphlet, and I made cards with my name, phone number, and email address for them to keep in their wallet in case they ever need it. The biggest issue I've seen when families PCS overseas is them just not having a connection to the community. A lot of people come here and they think they won't need any help. After they get here, though, it's a whole different story. So reaching out again once they've started to settle in is so important. Offer to take them to the local market, add them to local Facebook groups, or just get coffee. I try to do my check-ins at 2 days and 2 weeks, and I'll make contact again before any unit event like a barbecue to make sure they not only know that they're welcome, but then I know to look for them there. If at that point they still don't seem receptive, then I know that they have my information if they need me and know to step back until they reach out. Moving overseas can be overwhelming. Even just knowing there's someone that they can ask questions to without having to go through their sponsor can make it a lot easier to adjust and give them a better time out here overall.
Thank you so much, Amy. And we have a question for you. And one of the questions is, what is your appropriate budget? What is the approximate budget for welcome bags?
So typically I try to keep the bag at around $20, but it really depends on if the booster club is helping you spend money on this, and then what their budget is. But really this can be tailored to whatever the budget is. Most of the resources in here are free. And then for things like the laundry pods, I'll try to get coupons for those and buy them in bulk. The converter plugs, I'll often go to thrift shops on base to try to source those just to keep the cost down as well.
Awesome. And another question for you. During heavy PCS season, is it hard to keep up with meeting the families at the terminal?
It is definitely difficult. I will try to oftentimes prepare the welcome bags in bulk, just so I have them ready in case it gets a little bit too busy. But as long as there's someone there to welcome them, it really doesn't need to be the key spouse. It can just be a friendly spouse or someone that has been at the unit for a while and can kind of help them get through that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. Beck. And we'll have more time for questions at the end of all the panelists' brief. So at this time, we are going to go to Ms. Patrina LeBeck. She is from Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. Over to you, Patrina.
Thank you, Teresa. My name is Patrina LeBlanc, and I'm the Key Spouse Mentor for the 375th Civil Engineering Squadron at Scott Air Force Base. Our best practice is the deliberate partnering of our sponsor program and our Key Spouse program. We developed our best practice because we saw families PCSing in that needed immediate referrals or squadron assistance, and they were falling through the cracks. It usually takes time for spouses to connect with the squadron or group that their member will be working with. We realized that the families moved in between our recurring Key Spouse meetings, that we were kind of missing them because we weren't getting our updated rosters in time to contact them for a month or two. So we realized the benefit of connecting them with the squadron before they arrived on the base. We saw how important this pre-PCS connection could be by when we had an incoming member come in with a wife that was late in her pregnancy. Their goods were delayed due to coming from an Oconus location, area labor shortages, and COVID. They had been sleeping in their new house on air mattresses for weeks and using one pot, one pan, paper plates, etc., what I call PCS indoor camping. Their household goods were finally delivered the day she was released from the hospital after giving birth. Luckily, we found out a few days before, and a team was assembled to help the member on delivery day, and a place was provided for the family to rest during delivery. If there would have been Key Spouse contact prior to the arrival, resources could have been provided for the family, and we would have had everything in place before the last minute scramble that we had to do to help the family. The sponsor program is great, but the sponsor usually only talks to the inbound member. Having key spouse contact before PCS is a way for us to ensure that the spouse also has someone to voice concerns like family concerns to. Our squadron's best practice is building a partnership between the sponsors and the key spouses, and for us, that means aligning them to shops and flights. CE is a big unit with many elements within the squadron that are very different from each other. We range from explosive ordnance technicians, firefighters, engineers, and entomologists, and many, many other shops. It's an extensive range of unique work, training, TDYs, and deployment schedules. Because of this diversity, we found that it helps to have our key spouses connected with specific shops and like the sponsors. Our key spouses are, for the most part, a spouse from someone in the shop. And because of this intentional pairing, they understand the unique challenges that the families in those shops are going to face. Pre-work to make our best practice a reality was having the leadership team create a key spouse welcome template for the letter and handing it over to the spouses, the key spouses, to individually tailor before sending it out. Included in this letter is a form that requests spouse and family information. Both were added to the existing squadron welcome package that each sponsor sends out when they are appointed and notified of a new inbound member. We also try to schedule our key spouse meetings and our sponsor meetings on the same day, one right after another. It's just one more step to ensure our sponsors have met their key spouse and feel comfortable passing on the key spouse developed welcome letter and requesting the information as part of the welcome package. It drives home the point that our unit expects a partnership between the sponsor and key spouse before the family arrives. This partnership with the sponsors allows the key spouses to connect with families and provide resources much earlier than before. The welcome letter also includes useful social media pages such as the Squadron Spouse Facebook page and the Scott Spouse Facebook page, so spouses can begin to become part of the community before they even step foot on base. Families feel connected to the squadron and the base before they arrive, and the key spouses and leadership can begin preparing if a family will need extra support. We believe that this relieves some relocation anxiety for families, and it also helps leadership and the key spouses be better prepared. Although the effort we put in aligning our key spouses and sponsors to our shop to meet the need of a 400 plus persons squadron may not be necessary for every unit, I believe the core of our best practice can work with any squadron. Pairing the sponsors and the key spouse early on and capturing not only the inbound member, but also the family gives not only a great first impression, but also allows support immediately upon arrival to be the most effective when new families need it.
Thank you so much, Katrina. I've got one question that just came through. This is just a fabulous partnership you've developed, and it's worked, it seems so well. It's just been a perfect duo. Was it hard to convince the commander to buy in before you implemented?
So the commander's my husband, so it wasn't hard for me, but I can see where it would be because it's a little extra work that's required. But I think if you could explain to the commander how, and even the leadership team, the chief or senior enlisted leader and the shirt, if you could explain to them the benefits of it, and the benefits are that they're not getting last minute information about families, I think that would help a ton.
Thank you so much. It's all about communication, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to go to our next panelist. And the next panelist is Ms. Tricia Newman. She is from Hurlburt Field in Florida. Over to you, Tricia.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Tricia. My husband and I are stationed at Hurlburt Field. We're in the panhandle of Florida. I'm so honored to be here and share how we welcome new members and spouses to our unit, graciously referred to here as the VIP treatment. I'd like to take a moment and discuss the process that we use to make new families feel at home. First, though, you might be wondering why the slide says welcoming spooky spouses. That's just because we trace our squadron heritage back to Vietnam when they flew the spooky gunship. That was the call sign of the airplanes. And the squadron just has kept that name as a reminder of the history. Anyway, back to the VIP treatment. The first step for our process starts on day one when the new service member arrives on station and checks in with the squadron. One of the first things they do when meeting with the front office team is fill out a spouse information sheet, and then that's given to the unit secretary. She is a critical part of our process because she directly interacts with all the new members, and we find her to be best placed to identify new spouses and families for our team. The secretary then does two important things. She provides the new spouse information to me as the lead spouse, and then she also gives the member a welcome folder, which is just full of helpful information. And I'll talk through the welcome folder in a moment. After I receive the new spouse information, I personally contact the spouse and welcome them to the squadron. I usually start with a text since that seems to be the most beneficial way of communicating now. However, if I don't hear back, I will follow up with other means like a phone call or email. And then I have gone back to the active duty member to make sure that we got the right information in the first place, just to make that initial contact. In my initial contact, I introduced the spouse to information outlets that we have available here. That includes our private Facebook group, our Airmen and Family Readiness Center on base, as well as the base Facebook page, which is just where they can get base-wide information. I also informed the new spouse of the next upcoming event and offered to meet them in the parking lot and walk in together so that I can introduce them to new spouses. I know for me, that's a very difficult part of joining a new group, is that first interaction. So I always want to meet them ahead of time, or offer to meet them ahead of time, walk in together so that I can show them where to go and then help plug them into a conversation so that they don't feel like they're standing there and everybody else is already talking. I want them to feel welcomed into those conversations during their first experience with the unit. As the new spouse is getting settled in, I continue to serve as their key spouse, and I can help with the initial onboarding. But after they are a little bit more connected, a few months later, they're assigned to a flight key spouse, and then they continue their engagement for the remainder of their time with the squadron. If we could switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. I mentioned earlier, we provide a welcome packet for the members and the families. The packet that we have includes a welcome letter that my husband and I, he's the commander of the squadron, we wrote that just welcomes them to the squadron. We also have a background page detailing the squadron's history and accomplishments. We have a picture of the squadron patch along with a description of the image and its significance. Another page has helpful information for the squadron and base resources, like phone numbers. And then we also include a information sheet on how to get to our private Facebook page, since it's difficult to find on Facebook. We also include a page of squadron annual events that they can look forward to that we just traditionally have each year. We include OPSEC information just because it's ever important. And then also because most of the families are new to the area, we just include basics like a base map, medical group information, and local school details. And we also give information for other places like Airmen and Family Readiness Center flyers, like their next spouse orientation dates and any upcoming programs they have. And then lastly, because of our location specific things, like we're on the panhandle of Florida, so we provide hurricane information and things like that. So it could be something local. And that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for allowing me to participate in this.
Thank you so much, Tricia. Because of the personal contact that you have with each spouse, since you implemented this best practice, have you seen an increase in spouses attending events?
Yeah, actually, I have. Even at our last event, we had 4 new spouses come together, and then they came together to talk to each other as new spouses. So that was kind of a nice link. Our squadron has some people who are here for long periods of time. So it can be difficult for a new spouse to penetrate into that social scene. So I do think that we have had a little bit more success.
That is fabulous and so inspiring. We are getting close to the end of the Key Spouse Engagement Series. So if there's questions that were not answered, just make sure you know that we will answer them on the Key Spouse website, and that information is going to be posted. So without further delay, I would like to turn the mic back over to Ms. Perkins.
Thank you so much, Teresa and Key Spouse panelists. I think we would all love to have you as our Key Spouses when we came into a unit. So thank you for sharing the things that you do to make sure that your families feel welcome into the unit. Really appreciate your input and being here today. As Teresa just mentioned, and I'll reiterate all of the things that we went over today. So the slides and then eventually the video of this engagement will be posted on the AFPC Key Spouse website, and the link is there on your page. We'll also follow up with an email to you all to make sure that we have answered all of your questions. We'll go through the chat and make sure that we didn't miss anything in there, and make sure that you have all of the answers to those questions. We usually give ourselves about a week to answer it, so be looking out for that email. All right. Additionally, after we have Mrs. Raymond and Mrs. Brown give their closing comments, we'll have a survey link up. So please stick around for that. We really value your feedback so we know what we can do better in the next spouse engagement series. With that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Raymond and Mrs. Brown to provide closing comments.
Thank you, Andrea. To all our Key Spouses and mentors, thank you for your service. You are a direct link to resilience, and we are thankful for what you do each and every day to connect airmen, guardians, civilians, and their loved ones, to support and to share resources. To the team who put today's event together, our heartfelt gratitude to Andrea, Ms. Randy Ramstein, and to all the A1, S1, and Air Force Personnel Center team members. I know a lot of coordinating and hard work goes into these events. And thank you to the team who stood by today answering the chat questions. To all our spouse attendees, thank you very much for attending. I'd like to just share a little bit of my own 2 cents of advice. I've been a military spouse for 35 years, which is probably longer than many of you have been alive. 17 moves. Not gonna lie, it's been challenging many times. Multiple high schools for our kids. I struggled with spouse employment at the beginning. We had experienced a 9.0 earthquake, and also an evacuation for our family. But if I could say, would you do it all over again? I would certainly say yes. The experiences that you have of moving and enjoying a new culture, a new community, and making lifelong friends. It's just a wonderful life that our family, yeah, it's been struggles, but looking back, we would do it again. And I just recommend use the resources that are available to you and build your support networks. And more than anything, know that the Air and Space Forces need you and appreciate your relocations, and we're very grateful to you. Finally, I'd like to say thank you to our panel members and to our phenomenal Key Spouse best practice team, Katrina, Amy, and Trisha. You are rock stars. It's so important to welcome newcomers, and you showed us how to do it in style and grace, and well done. And thank you all for sharing, all Key Spouses, for being an inspiration because of the devotion, time, and effort you put forth in serving our airmen and guardian and their families. So thank you very much, and over to you, Shireen.
Well, thank you for that, Molly. And wow, 17 moves. Oh, I hold a candle to you. but I feel like I'm kind of in your corner. If anybody can stand there together with you, it'll be me. So, but thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your history. But hasn't this been a packed 2 hours of information? Thank you to everyone who is a part of, thank you to our panelists who are focused on the PCS moves to speak about those critical areas of concern, providing us all, providing us the overall big picture of what is happening here and now, as well as going forward. So many of you are taking advantage of this time to ask your questions and share your comments and suggestions, which is what we really hoped for. Being prepared for this move and ready for your transition will help make this a smooth move for you. And what about our featured key spouses? They are certainly creative and quite eager at making our families feel welcome. I so enjoyed hearing what best practices and toolkits our key spouses have to put together and are finding so successful. Sharing is spreading the care for our families and helping one another thrive. For our spouses out there, can you see yourself amongst the key spouses? Being that change you would like to see in your own community? Perhaps you've been a beneficiary of some of these services and want to pay it forward. It's a wonderful way to support your neighbor, your unit, and your community. Thank you for what you're doing to engage our members, spouses, and families in this community. But I'd like to, as Molly has done, I'd like to take a minute to thank all the folks who were a part of this, both in front of and behind the scenes to make this possible. Andrea Perkins, Lieutenant Colonel Elliot Smith, Randy Ramstein, Kirsta Thomas, Teresa Galvin, Ellie Bogensberger, I think I got that right. I hope I did. Aaron Collier, and then for some of those who are answering questions behind the scene, Craig Punches at Transcom, Melissa Jordan at Transcom, Danny Martinez at Transcom, John Uday at Transcom, and Sharon Thompson. And then our person on the video, Fred Chapa, along with our facilitators, Teresa Galvin. Thank you for being a part of our third key spouse engagement, and your involvement is obviously evident and greatly appreciated. To everyone watching and engaged, thank you for joining us. Your questions or comments are keeping us on our toes and ready to provide you with all that you need to get you to your next location with great ease. It's a teamwork approach as our families prepare for their move, and our Air Force community is trying their best to set you up for success. As General Brown likes to say, success takes help. Failure you can do alone. Isn't that the truth? Wishing you all a smooth transition and have a great day or good night. Over to you, Andrea.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Raymond and Ms. Brown. Appreciate your support. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll stay on the line to collect any questions that you may have. Please make sure to bookmark that Key Spouse webpage at the AFPC website so that we can follow up with you there on a video from today's engagement, answers to questions and answers, and just overall Key Spouse program information. So please take this survey and we'll follow up with you. We appreciate you for joining us today and we hope to see you next time. Thank you so much.